can't really imagine what it was like when you've had your leg pulled off.
I was aware of accidents. I never thought anything would happen to me, though.
Once you lose your job, you lose your money.
The only option left to us as surgeons was to amputate.
This is a video survival kit for you and your tractor. And the reason I'm here is not because the HSE Health and Safety Executive wanted a BBC voice in particular, but because I've been farming myself for many years, mostly dairy, but some vegetables. I've even tried farming organically, and that's not easy, I can tell you. So I know from first hand the dangers of becoming too familiar with one of these beasts. Every day in Britain, tractor accidents, often fatal, happen to people who thought they happened only to other people. In this video, we'll look at reconstructions of just 3 of the hundreds of tractor accidents that happen in Britain every year. Spot the dangerous practice. See if you recognise yourself. Right, let's see what went wrong. 5 tons of tractor on a steep slope, a potentially dangerous situation made worse by simple mistakes like changing gear. This is where the luck finally ran out. He almost got it right. It only takes one small oversight. You think you've put on the handbrake, but how many times have you ever actually checked? And even if the handbrake is up, how safe are the brakes themselves?
Like the other John, I'm also a farmer, although most people know me better as a wing forward for Scotland. We've got 1,800 acres here in the heart of the borderlands, mixed arable and livestock. We've also a 1,200 acre hill farm for breeding ewes and cattle. One of my greatest fears about accidents, especially on the hill, is that they're likely to happen out of sight and hearing of anyone who might be able to help. Even a simple flesh wound becomes a matter of life and death if you're in the middle of nowhere. In this video, I'll be looking at the safe practice needed to avoid accidents like the one you've just seen. Here are the key points as I see them. Firstly, be aware of the special dangers of driving on slopes. You shouldn't even be here unless you're an experienced driver. Secondly, get into the right gear before starting to climb and know how to turn safely. Next, know the safe stop procedure. Handbrake on, controls neutral, engine off and remove key. And finally, make sure your tractor is properly maintained, and that includes brakes, tyres, steering.
Now, I'm not a real farmer, but I spent 6.5 years playing Rachel Hughes on Emmerdale, and this has given me an insight into what real farming's about. We filmed the exterior locations on a real farm, and with 45 crew and actors around, safety is of a top priority. Today I'm going to introduce you to some people who've had their lives altered by tractor accidents. These people have got 2 things in common. Firstly, their lives have been dramatically and often tragically changed by their experience. And secondly, none of them ever thought it would happen to them.
Barry Dawson suffered multiple injuries as he tried to pick off potatoes left on his harvester.
I should have stopped the PTO, and I shouldn't have risked my life just for a few potatoes, you know, a pound's worth of potatoes, that's all, if that.
14-year-old David Turner slipped and fell under his uncle's forage harvester.
And he'd been trapped for 1.5 hours in the machine, and a medical team was sent out to sedate him and help with the extrication. Really, his foot was destroyed, and there was no question of any other treatment but amputation.
Graham Brown was dragged under his baler as he tried to clear a blockage. He'd also left the tractor PTO running.
It ripped my leg off, all except for just the hip here. It was hanging on by the ball joint and the hip and a bit at the top. And it ripped me, I've lost a muscle down the inside of my leg. The surgeon had to take that off. And I had 370 stitches altogether.
The experience of people like Graham can only begin to convey the terrible personal cost of tractor accidents. And he is only one of the hundreds of victims and thousands of relatives that suffer each year. People who wake up one morning thinking it's going to be just another ordinary day, and by that evening their lives have been permanently and often tragically changed.
So let's see what went wrong this time. Well, first, farms aren't Grand Prix circuits. Cut your speed. Quite apart from the risk of hurtling around a blind corner and meeting someone or something coming the other way, there's also the danger that you'll roll the tractor. We've all done this to save time and because we thought we could get away with it. But the fact is, each year many people don't get away with it, and they have the injuries to prove it. This is a real killer. Confusion and noise are a lethal combination. Just a minute or two carefully planning this job could have saved a lifetime of disability. Finally, don't put yourself between a moving tractor and anything else.
Okay, so what can we learn this time? Firstly, remember that just because you're driving around a farm doesn't mean it's safer than an ordinary road. Always anticipate the worst. Drive at a speed that will let you stop safely, whatever or whoever runs out in front of you. Forget the urge to be cool or macho when you're working with tractors. They're big, heavy and immensely powerful. By comparison, we're not. Hanging off the back of a tractor may seem to save you time, but it's dangerous, so don't do it. As for the actual hitching accident, there are a number of ways to avoid it. Firstly, plan the job. And if you're working with someone else, make sure that they can hear you and you can hear them. In health and safety jargon, it's called devising a safe system of work. And any safe system starts with training. So if you haven't received any instruction on the work you've been asked to do, get trained first. Both you and your employer could be breaking the law if you don't.
Let's take a closer look at the point John was making about breaking the law. We've seen that the personal cost of tractor accidents are high, but most people also underestimate the financial and legal costs.
The maximum fine in the magistrates' courts can be £20,000 for people that fail to comply with the Health and Safety at Work Act, and £5,000 for people that fail to comply with the regulations. Of course, there's the additional problem that they could occasionally be charged with manslaughter, and under the Crown Court they can have unlimited fines.
Mel Rain has worked as a health and safety inspector for over 30 years, rooting out dangerous working practice.
We have powers to enter any farm to check that tractors are being used correctly and that they are guarded properly and in fact safe to use.
While the Health and Safety Executive do prosecute farmers for dangerous practice, their main aim is to prevent the accidents happening in the first place. This video forms part of a wider programme to improve tractor safety. If you're concerned about tractor safety on your farm, please don't hesitate to contact the HSE in confidence.
Another financial cost is the loss of income. John Dickman's injuries left him unable to take on manual work.
You lose your wage, you lose your job, you lose everything. You've got to start from scratch, you've got to start again. When you move into a rented place, you've got rent to find, because all farm work is tied cottages, well, most of it is.
When Eddie Lark was killed fixing his power harrow, his widow Margaret suffered financially as well as emotionally.
Well, sort of after the accident, it was, well, you just don't know where you're going to go or what you're going to do, really, because Eddie had no life insurance. He was so safety conscious, and I don't really ever seriously think that he would think anything would happen to him.
Right, so let's see what went wrong. First mistake, just because you're driving slowly up the middle of an apparently empty field for the umpteenth time doesn't mean it's safe to stop thinking, listening, or looking. Okay, so these children shouldn't have been playing here in the first place, but you'd be the one responsible for killing them if they ended up under your wheels. Here's a simple mistake: never jump forward out of the cab. Each year, dozens of people end up in hospital because of it. This PTO shaft guard is faulty and lethal. Loose clothing adds to the risk of having your body pulled limb from limb. But what actually killed this driver was that split second of insanity in which he decided to sort out the blockage without first turning off the power.
Right, on to safe practice. Firstly, keep your wits about you at all times. Secondly, if there are children around, stop work and get rid of them safely. And if you're leaving the cab, climb down as you would a ladder, using the handholds and the steps. Next, always make sure you're wearing close-fitting clothing without anything loose that could pull you into any moving machinery. A boiler suit is ideal. And finally, don't forget the most important rule of all. Each and every time you leave the cab, handbrake on, controls neutral, switch off power, and take the key with you. Handbrake on, controls neutral, switch off power, and take the key with you.
This video forms part of a wider health and safety executive programme to reduce the toll of deaths and injuries on British farms. The basic message is very simple. Accidents always happen to people who think they won't happen to them. People like you and me. Even if it doesn't kill you, a tractor accident will change your life forever. And almost every accident can be avoided by three things: thought, time, and training. The first is free and the other two cost very little, particularly when they're compared to the cost of an accident.
So make sure you are trained for the job, that you have the time to plan and carry it out carefully, and that you keep your brain in gear at all times.